Okay, hey, let's get on with our first topic of the day. This is the Africa-U.S. or U.S.-Africa Summit. Joe Biden has announced billions of dollars in support and investment to Africa as he met with heads of the continent. Tell us a little bit more about the importance of him meeting 49 leaders.
Well, it reminds me of what the U.S. approach to Africa now reminds me of the U.S. approach to Southeast Asia now. I mean, the U.S. has woken up that it is in a competition, certainly in Southeast Asia with China. It really needed to up its game in Southeast Asia, diplomatically, militarily, economically. And so we've seen so much more engagement under the Biden administration with Southeast Asia. We're now seeing that in Africa, because Africa is not yet the economic power that it will be, that Southeast Asia is, but it is going to be. And it is a critical part of the global rules going forward. And so the U.S. had to wake up, had to engage with Africa. So now the president brought 49 African leaders to really highlight that the U.S. is no longer going to have what one commentator called benign neglect towards Africa. We now, the United States, have to be in there. We cannot cede the ground to China and Russia, which are ahead of the United States when it comes to Africa.
Well, that was the key, wasn't it? Because President Trump pretty much neglected the continent during his 4 years in power. Not only that, he insulted several African leaders. How much ground do they have to make up to the other major heavyweights, particularly China, as you mentioned, but also Russia?
Well, I mean, the U.S. has got to figure out how are we going to engage economically, militarily, and it's more difficult for the U.S. because look, Russia approaches it in one way. We're just going to sell you arms. We're going to sell you whatever arms you want. You just give us money. So Russia has one focus. China, it's more on the economic focus, and it's kind of one way. You know, we'll invest in your country, but all that money is going to come back to China. So it's a win-win, but it comes with strings. The U.S. looks at it from all of those, and it also says we're going to look at your human rights record, we're going to look at your institutions, we're going to look at your governance. So it's much more difficult in how the U.S. engages because it demands more. But now this is where it has to start. And you're right. And President Trump never stepped foot in Africa in his 4 years. I'm sure he's never stepped foot in Africa probably in his life because he couldn't build a Trump hotel or a Trump golf course there. But now we have to get going. And so you have President Biden announcing he's going to be going to Africa, the first president, to go to sub-Saharan Africa since 2015. You've got Catherine Tai talking about trade. You've got Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, talking about investment. You've got Vice President Harris talking about it as well. So it's a full court press. And the African countries are saying the same exact thing that Prime Minister Lee is saying and President Duterte is saying here. Don't make us choose, United States. We need to engage with China. We need to engage with you. Don't make us choose. So I think you have a real blueprint for U.S. engagement in Southeast Asia is what it's going to look like in Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.